Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrew and I am alcoholic. Everybody's asking where the hell is Murphy's? Well, it's an hour east of Stockton. Everybody know where Stockton is. Well, where the hell is that? Well, you go, it takes a little while to get there. I guess that's just really kind of a long way to tell you that I really believe the phrase that the alcoholic will drive 100 miles to speak, but he won't cross the street to listen. That's why I'm here. I got the invite from Billy D. I want to thank Billy D. for letting me in here tonight. Billy D's got a great way of welcoming the newcomers. I wish I could do it as well as he does. But what he really does is he tells everybody, you know, the court, the attendance verification people, welcome here. The new people, thanks for standing up and introducing yourself. You're welcome here. And at the end of this meeting, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. And at the end of the Lord's Prayer, we say, keep coming back. And that's one of the most powerful messages that we have, is keep coming back. That's all I've been doing since June of 1989, is I keep coming back. I remember I was trying to relax myself, getting ready to do a talk. And in my old sales days training, they said, you know, you just go ahead and picture your audience without their pants on. And that did not relax me at all. I picture some of these guys without their pants on. And oh, man. And then they say, well, just picture them in the bathroom. And it got a lot worse. I pictured everybody trying to line up for that bathroom, and I was, oh, no, now they're never going to be back here at 8 o'clock to hear me speak. Then I pictured us, it got really calm for me, because I pictured us all next door at this bar. And it got real easy. Because I fit in here. I didn't fit in a whole lot of places that I ever went to. I fit into this particular meeting, and I fit into Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. I guess I could tell you I got here by accident, but everybody knows that would be my fourth or fifth lie this evening already. I was doing so well at life, I ended up in AA. And my head thought, that's the end of the road. And as I've stayed around here a lot longer, I've come to discover it's a beginning, and it's a tremendous beginning. It's just that I've got a tremendous amount of work to do to stay here. I could give you the whole story of my drinking, which we have literature that suggests that you kind of try to help the new people identify. If they're kind of somber, then you tell them a little bit of somber stories about your drinking. If they're feeling kind of funny, you tell them some of the humorous parts about your drinking. Because we might have somebody having a great day here and somebody having a really horrible day. I don't know where y'all coming from. So I'll just tell you what drinking did to me, and if you relate, that's great. If not, please come back to another meeting. Just as an aside, I had to take a young woman to a meeting several years ago, and I decided, this is my one shot to get her ass sober. So I took her to the Sunday night meeting, which is an hour and a half long. And unfortunately, when I sat next to her, I was painfully aware that most people were not talking in any way that would help her understand what the disease of alcoholism is. So we kind of lost our one shot. I mean, it's really a two-way street. You got a speaker saying some stuff, and then you got a listener. If the listener's not willing to hear, the speaker can say all kinds of great things, nothing happens. But when that student is ready, then that teacher's going to appear. So if you're ready, I might say something that hits your heart. If you're not ready, in fact, we got literature that says despite all we can say, some are not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. I just hope you come back to another meeting so you can wake up. My drinking really didn't escalate a whole lot. High school, I wasn't really quite big enough to play football, but I was big enough to hold the football chains on the sidelines And me and my buddy Johnny, I go, oh boy, anonymity, John J. I don't even think he's in this program. I don't think anybody's going to care if I say his last name or not. We would take some Bacardi and Coke to the Rose Gardens over here, drink a little bit, go hold the chains, halftime, go back and drink some Bacardi and Coke, and try to hold the chains upright for the second half. If any games were on a close call by maybe a yard or two, that might have been our fault, but we tried to just get through. I was at an all-boys high school, and it's kind of tough to fit in, but drinking seemed to make things just kind of go real easy. I went down to college in Santa Barbara, and then I lived in Spain for a year, and it's really odd when I was in Spain. I was raised in America. I had American history crammed down my throat. I had a very American perspective, and I get over there, and they got, socialists and Marxists and everything. So I bring some of what California has to offer from Mendocino County, and I learn to drink like they drink, and I can party with these people. And I really like the Marxists. I really like them a lot because these guys were getting laid. So I figured, hey, I'm going to fit in with these guys. This is going to be really cool. I'm a capitalist, but I'll hang out with the Marxists because they're partying all the time. This is going to be really groovy. So I would sell out just about anything to have a good time. I chased alcohol pretty much over 3 continents. I got a buddy traveling around the world, and he and his wife, they're not chasing alcohol around the world. They're having a good time. I didn't really have all that much of a good time. I hit some pretty bad bottoms all around the place. What happened for me was actually something really close to home. Just down the road here on Lawrence Expressway and 280, back in June of 1989, I had been to a party up in San Francisco, and it was a really great party. There was a woman up there serving tequila, all kinds of different types of tequila. There were people doing all kinds of other things in all the other rooms, and I was having a ball. The funny thing about it is that the woman that invited me up there, I never saw her until, I saw her when we showed up, and I saw her when she asked us if we could leave. But I didn't see her in the meantime. It just kind of became my party. And there was comics up there. We were having a great time. And it's really funny, in AA we ask people to be pretty open-minded. There I was. This woman was passing out tequila that I'd never heard of. People were saying, hey, drink this, smoke this, do this. I would just, oh, yeah, right on, woo, just everything. Just never said no at all. I come into AA and they say, hey, take the 12 steps with the sponsor. And I go, hey, wait, we've got to think about this here. There was no real whole lot of perspective here. I mean, I was crazy as hell out there. It was taking the wrong direction. And I get in here, and now I'm going to start questioning the direction that they're giving me. It didn't make any sense. So I was at this party having a great time, I thought. And the young lady said, it's time to go. And I said, well, I tell you, I've been drinking a little bit, so give me an hour, I'll just drink water, and I'll be able to drive you home. So that extended my drinking by about another hour. And I came flying down the hill, and we ended up in Campbell at the little bar. I think it was Zapp's or Puma's at the time, and this band called Rain, it was a Beatles cover band, was playing there, and I was supposed to meet some friends there a couple hours before. So I just parked the car. I'm thoroughly upset with this young lady because she's ruining my good time. I don't know if anybody relates to that. You ever been having a good time and somebody ruins it for you? Well, she was ruining my good time. And I just pulled into the parking lot at the bar, and I said, I'll be right back. I left the car running. What a great date, really classy guy. Leave her sitting there, and I say, I'll be right back. I run upstairs. I come flying upstairs. The band's just about ready to be done. I go up there, I get a beer, I throw the beer down. These guys are looking at me like, you were supposed to be here like 2 or 3 hours ago. Oh, yeah, whatever, man, no big deal. Throw down the beer, and I just leave them sitting there, and I run back down into this car. I get in the car, and, of course, she made me do this. She's driving me to drink. This is the only way I'm going to be able to have any peace in my life. That's a lie, by the way. I drive her over to her house over here off of Lawrence Expressway. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning. I pull up to Lawrence Expressway, and I'm going to get on 280, so there's a red light, and it's very early in the morning. I look to the left, there's not a car in sight. I look to the right, there is not a car for many miles. I decide to go forward. Well, there was a car very close by. I was not the only car at that intersection. There was a highway patrol vehicle right behind me. I get through the red light, And I'm right in the middle of the intersection, and there's a red light, and then there's another red light. What the hell? There's more red lights at the... and I was going to get pulled over. Now, I wish I had this story where June of 89, my life went like this, and it crashed, and I came to AA, and ain't I something, and it's all wonderful. It didn't quite happen that way. These cops, they were playing good cop, bad cop with me. If you ever get arrested again, and I hope you don't park your car on the freeway if you can at all help it. Just for those of you who are going to go do some experimenting and then maybe come back and tell us not to do that, I'm already telling you not to do that. Here's why. I failed the sobriety test, and the cop says, I tell you, you can leave your car here on the freeway, and it'll get impounded, or you can let me drive it off the freeway, and I'll park it for you. I had a quick moment of clarity, and I said, you can drive it. He drove it from Lawrence Expressway, the next exit Saratoga Avenue. He drives it off Saratoga Avenue. Meanwhile, I've been cuffed, and I'm put into the backseat of this highway patrol car. And there goes my little Ford Tempo off down Saratoga, exits there, and it parks at Denny's, and there's the Denny's restaurant there, and there's a gas station there. This guy, he pulls my car. The highway patrol guy pulls his car with me in it right into the middle of the whole place. The floodlights of the gas station are on the thing. I'm sitting in the back with my hands cuffed. And this guy, the other cop, is pulling my car into the Denny's parking lot, and he's left the lights on. And he's getting out of the car. And I'm trying to get his attention, hey, man, you're leaving my lights on, man. Hey, man, that's uncool, man. Oh, man. Right then I caught my reflection in the window. And I realized this is not what I had set out to do. When I was a little kid, there's a picture of me sitting in a rock in Thompson Canyon in Colorado. Cute little kid, 4 years old. I was blonde-haired at the time. And I got my little hand on the granite, my little feet sticking out. And I knew at a very, very early age, I knew a lot of things were going to happen to me. I knew what grammar school I was going to go to. I was going to go to St. Victor's on the east side here. And I knew that I would finish that school because I had an older brother who had finished that school and gone on to high school. I knew the high school he's going to go to is Bellarmine. I knew that. I don't know how I knew it. I just knew it. I knew that I would graduate from that high school and I would go on to college just like my parents did. And I would meet my wife in college and I would live happily ever after. All this came rushing back to me with my hands cuffed behind me that nowhere had I ever set out to get arrested. I did not want this. And it was happening. I did not intend it to happen. It was happening. And it was undeniable. And there I was, kind of met face to face. That was the first bit. That was like the first little installment that began to chink away at my denial. My brother, just about this time, I have two older brothers. My older brother had just gotten sober just about this time. Didn't know that. Wondered why we didn't hang out so much, but never really, get on with it. I got other people I could drink with. He ended up, that's the first installment. March of 89, they ended up at my brother's table, his kitchen table. Now, like I said, my story would be great if I just hit bottom, got on with not drinking, came to AA. That didn't happen. The next day, I was back doing the same thing with some big lies to people about where my car was and why the battery was dead. Off I go. So I ended up at my brother's house in March of 89, and he had about 10 months of recovery or so. And he gave me a beer. It was a Steinlager, a big liter bottle of beer. This was my last beer. Unfortunately, March of 89 is not my sobriety date. We have a program of total abstinence, and I had to quit doing some other things. But in March of 89, I sat across my brother's kitchen table. I was drinking a beer. I just finished the beer, and he had just enough information to be dangerous. He had been to maybe 1 or 2 AA meetings. Somebody gave him a book. I think he'd been seeing a therapist. Something like that. He had some information. And he was going to pass it on to me. Now, I have my brothers, I remember when I was a kid, my brothers, typewriter on the chest, torture tests with great blades of grass up the nose. I knew my older brothers had that in them. And I was kind of sitting there listening to them going, here he is again. That bigger brother of mine. But something inside of me was going, I ought to listen to this older brother. And what he was telling me was, he said, the disease of alcoholism is progressive. It gets progressively worse, never better. And I looked at my life between July of 1988 and March of 1989, and I could see that my life had gotten worse in every single department. Financially, I could not afford the amount of alcohol I needed to drink, so I had a lot of lower companions to help me drink. Several relationships, the one woman I took to that party, I still owe an amends to her, and this is 11, 12 years later, and I can't set that right. I'm on the 8th step with that for a long, long time. I'm very willing to make amends to that, but I can't set that right. But there was about 3 or 4 of those had come and gone with the same kind of behavior on my part. Wonder why they left. Emotionally, I felt pretty empty. I mean, what the hell was I doing with my life? I mean, I was just empty inside. So something was ringing true when he said it gets progressively worse, it never gets better. I was, yeah, my life has gotten progressively worse. And if you're honest with yourself, maybe that's happened in your life. Maybe not. Then he went on to say, he said, this is the disease, this is the only disease that'll tell you that you do not have it. It has denial. And right then I kind of started going, I know where he's coming from. This is that older brother that used to do the typewriter on the chest and the grass blades up the nose. Because if I say I'm alcoholic, then he's going to say, yeah, you're alcoholic. If I say I'm not alcoholic, he's going to say, well, you're alcoholic, you're just in denial. He just had me in this catch-22. So I was really thinking, how can I get out of this? I have a very keen mind. I mean, I think I do. I mean, I thought it was a great idea to speak here tonight. And I couldn't get out of it. And right when I was just done racking my brain, it seemed like it was about 20 minutes, but it was really about 18 seconds. Right when I was just about done racking my brain of how the hell I was going to get out of this bind, he said, there's a way out, and I burst into tears. I just started sobbing. And there was his wife looking at me, and there is he looking at me, and I couldn't believe it. Something he said had wound all the way around the back door. I had all these mental defenses up. I was going to find my way out of this thing, and something got through the back door and hit my heart and went, ugh, shit, I got this thing. He gave me his big book. I started reading. I still have his big book. It's my big book now. It's my book, but it's our book, you know what I mean? I started reading that book, and I didn't drink anymore. I haven't had a drink since then. Unfortunately, I think it was right around, this was March 21st, 1989. About 2-3 weeks later was tax day. I had some taxes due, and I still had the art of alibi and excuse down pretty well. So I took some other substances to try to relax myself. They rapidly stopped working. That's why my sobriety date's out in June. I didn't quite quit everything until June 18th of 1989. I was also, at the same time of all of my brother talking to me, I had been to see Judge Chang because, of course, I'd been arrested back in July of '88. And I'd actually gone to see Judge Chang. I was going to come up on my 3rd visit with Judge Chang right here in Santa Clara County Municipal Court because I didn't get it right the first time and I didn't get it right the second time. The first time I went to see him, it was pretty much, here's your fine, here's your weekend work program, here's what's going on. This was back in 1989. I just talked to a guy at my company that got arrested. If you're thinking about it, it's a lot worse. I mean, they take your license for like 1 million years or something. It's really bad. This guy was, the judge was telling me what was going to be laid out for my sentence. And I said, yes, sir, yes, sir. And I was in a nice pinstripe suit. I had a lavender shirt on. I had my paisley tie on. I figured that was going to kind of ease the sentence. He laid it out for me. I left. And I guess this was like October or November. And I went to a party in December. When you're hitting bottom, it gets ugly. I went to this party in December. It was a boat party up in the bay. And I went out with a young lady there. I had to be at weekend work program the next morning, and it was Friday night. It was really late, and I said, I'll just stay here. This is up in San Francisco. And I said, here's how it works, young lady. What you do is you just show up on Sunday, and you tell them, I missed Saturday. Sorry, I couldn't make the weekend work program. Just sign me up today. Okay, don't do that if you're thinking about doing that. What they do is they put you in jail when you decide to just kind of magically show up when there's a warrant out. So I went back to Judge Chang for the second time, same pinstripe suit, same lavender shirt, same paisley tie, because I figure, you got to look good, because I don't got nothing for a story to tell. I just hope they're going to look at me. Fine went up, weekend program got longer, they didn't count the time served of the 4 or 8 hours I spent in jail, so there I was back to square zero. Meanwhile, I was supposed to be going to alcohol classes, and by the 7th alcohol class, you had to have been to 2 AA meetings. Well, I was explaining this to somebody. I had been to one AA meeting, kind of. I mean, it was over here at midnight or something, and I couldn't get to the second one. I said, here's what you do. You just show up at the 7th class. You tell them kind of what's going on. Tell them, hey, it's kind of hard to find meetings in the valley when there's 635 of them, and they're all over the place, and you don't really kind of know where they are. And then you just kind of go ahead and say, can I come to alcohol class and bring you that slip next week? That's the way this will work. Well, thanks be to God, not at the time, but certainly now. I think, what was that woman's name? How did I ever forget it? She said goodbye. I showed up at class. She said, where's your slip? I don't have it. Here's my, goodbye. Back to Judge Chang, back in the pinstripe suit, back looking good, like it's going to get me anywhere. Fine goes up, weekend work program gets longer. So by the time my brother's speaking to me, I'm going, all right, I'm getting kind of a little bit willing here, just a little bit. Comes around June of 1989, June 5th of 1989. I show up at my first AA meeting, and I have my court card, and I'm really going to do this thing this time. I get my court card signed, and I go to myself, you know what? I'm not going to bring my court card to the next meeting. I'm going to show up at a meeting without the court card, so I have to come back to another meeting. That made a lot of sense to me at the time, and then now, hearing me say that, I just go to that emotional bankruptcy. I mean, I was so lonely, I had nowhere else to go. It was a good idea for me to go to another AA meeting. That's the options I had left was don't bring your court card slip, so you go to an AA meeting, and that means you have to go back to at least one more. That's where I was. And on June 6, 1989, the next meeting I went to, I was sitting there in the back, and this woman was up at a podium like this, and she was talking about, oh my God, life sucks, and it's this, and it's really bad, and all these things have happened to me. And I was sitting in the back. We used to have a smoking section back then, and I didn't know if I said this aloud or not, but her response made me think I had said something aloud. I said to myself, maybe aloud, but I'm pretty sure it was just to myself, is it getting any better? And the next line out of her mouth was, and it's getting better today. And I got a little glimpse. I just had I was in shock. I thought I'd said something aloud. I got a little glimpse of what my life might be able to be like if I would just get a little bit honest with myself. Just a little bit. So I came back to the next meeting, and I got my court card signed, and then something happened there. They started talking about sponsorship. Get a sponsor. And something started, I was going, man, I got nowhere else to go. I wasn't saying these kind of words, but my behavior was indicating I was on empty. I ended up going to some meetings. I was still kind of, what do they call it, non-habit forming marijuana habit. I had kind of that going on a little while through June, trying to take the edge off, hey, I can still kind of do this thing. But June 18th, I finally stopped everything, and I went to a meeting, and they said, get a sponsor, and I said, gosh, I think I could do that. And they said, there's a temporary sponsor box. I said, I think I can do that. So I put my name in the temporary sponsor box, and 3 days later, this guy named Kevin R. calls me. Kevin's still around here. He's my one and only sponsor. And he says, hey, let's meet at the noon meeting. And on June 21st, 1989, I met my sponsor. We were sitting on a bench at 1 West Campbell Avenue. The book says something like this, that the alcoholic, armed with the facts about him or herself, can generally win the confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Something like that. This guy had my confidence in about 10 minutes. Less than that, maybe 5 minutes. What was happening was I was sitting there. The guy pulls up in his big green truck. I'm driving a black Ford Tempo still. Got the battery repaired and everything. So I'm thinking, okay, we're pretty different. He's a truck driving kind of guy. I'm not. He gets out of the car. He's 6'5". I'll say 250. If he were here, I'd probably say 220. he's well, he'll hear this, and I could see, I'm not 6'5". That's pretty different. And he sits down next to me and he begins to tell me a couple pieces of his story. He's been married twice, the Grim Reaper and the Ice Lady, and he'd been stabbed 3 times by the same woman. And now I don't know, I don't look much like a fighter. I mean, I wasn't much one of those covert fighters. I think I'm an overt fighter. I didn't get in a whole lot of fights, and I'd certainly never been stabbed. I'd never been married. I'd never been stabbed by an ex-wife. I'd never been stabbed 3 times by an ex-wife. So I'm kind of running it in my head. This guy is very, 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 very different from me. And yet, he's got my full attention. What was going on was the guy was armed with the facts about himself. And what he was doing was he was sharing his experience of what it was like to be in his drinking days. And something was going on. He was getting my attention. I could relate. He got my attention pretty good because what he said is, "Do you have a book?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I love you very much." And I looked into his beautiful blue eyes, and I knew the guy wasn't going to hurt me. And this is after my head was going, this guy, he's a fighter, plus education. He quit school a lot earlier than I had quit school. I quit school probably way too late. I should have stopped a lot earlier. But we were very different on the education front. We were very different in a lot of ways. All of these differences here, what they were telling me in the meetings I was going to in June, I'd been in a few meetings, they were saying, look for the similarities, not the differences. And some kind of similarity was coming loud and clear. This guy was clean and sober. He had some kind of a happy life. He didn't have all this stuff I had going on. So I got him to be my sponsor, and he got me this other 12 and 12 book, and he said, read this and read these pages and then call me. You're going to call me for the first 30 days here. You're going to call me every day. And I said, okay. And I'd been to a few meetings, so I knew a little bit about, okay, you got to do what they say, right? Next day comes around, and I call him. And he says, hey, Andy, how you doing? I said, hey, well, okay. All right. He said, did you read what I told you to read? I said, well, yeah. Yeah. And he said, okay, great. Let's get together tomorrow at noon. Is there anything else you need to tell me? Well, yeah, she called. I bumped into her at work, and she left me. And he just says, okay, I'll just see you tomorrow at noon, and he hangs up. This is very odd. It's because he's not very educated or something. I don't know. Go to the meeting, meet him at noon, and he says, okay, here's your little reading assignment. Okay, call me tonight, and see you tomorrow. I call him that night, and he says, hey, Andy, how's it going? And I said, well, it's not going that great. I bumped into her at work, and he interrupts me again. He says, did you read what I told you to read? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, great. Meet me tomorrow at noon. We'll talk about it. Okay. Next night comes around, and he says, I call him, and he says, hey, Andy, how's it going? All right, I guess, because I know he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear anything I'm saying. But he says, no, really, what's going on? Well, I bumped into her at work, and he said, I don't care about any of this stuff. Did you read what I told you to read? And I said, and I just hung up the phone on him. I think I said something explicative, and I hung the phone on him. He calls back. Well, the phone rings, and when all the living skills that a person has is reduced to the old, I'm not going to answer the phone because I know who it is game, you're skating pretty thin ice. Well, that's all I had going for me, so I know he's calling. I know it's him. So I pick up the phone and say, what? And he says, sounds to me like you're angry. And this epiphany happened. The sky opened. I could not believe it, that somebody had labeled a feeling I'd been having for a long, long time. Yeah. In the 4th step, it talks about we thought our drinking made us into, what's the vernacular, assholes. When that's not the case. We had a lot of stuff going on that made us that way to begin with, and we tried to pour some alcohol in on top of it. So I had a lot of stuff going on, like anger, and he was there to label some of these things for me. And I went, yeah, that's what that is. I had no idea that that's what I'd been feeling most of my life. There's a tremendous amount of anger. And there I was talking to a guy about it. I'd never set out to do that either. And yet something else was happening to me. I mean, it felt kind of weird. Wow, I'm feeling actually a little better. Like I'm feeling a little more light in the shoulders. I actually feel okay. So this went on a while, and what ended up happening was he pretty much told me to shut up and listen. And I tell you this, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the message is love. And sometimes love is going to roar like a lion, and sometimes it's going to be as soft as a lamb. And what he was doing was he was loving me. What he knew about me was my ego had to be smashed. He just knew that. He'd been around long enough to know that my ego had to be smashed. Now, how do you take this guy that has to go to AA meetings because he's got nowhere else to go? The only skill he has is the old, I know who it is on the phone, I'm not going to answer it game. Doesn't have a single friend, is lamenting a girlfriend that left him for his boss. I mean, how could this guy have any ego left? Well, I got a ton of it. And I go to a meeting on Sunday night at a recovery house in a little town called Copperopolis. This guy came up to me, and he had 3 years in the program, left for 12 or 15 years. He got it really good. He moved up to the hills, ended up hitting really bad bottom. And he comes in, and I'm talking to him. This is to show you how ego is. And he says, I'm going to do this 30-day program. I've been in AA before. I think I can set this thing right. And he said, the great thing is when I leave this program, I'm going to go work for a guy who's got 8 years of recovery. And I asked him, I said, maybe you ought to ask that guy to be your sponsor. And he pauses, and he gets kind of starry-eyed, and he says, yeah, maybe I'll let that guy sponsor me. And I just looked at him, dude, you've got zero. You're going to let this guy sponsor you? Get a clue. Humble yourself and ask him. I relate to that guy because that's the kind of ego I had in here. I took steps 1, 2, and 3 with Kevin. Ended up sitting there ready to finally read the inventory that I'd written for my inventory instead of about her, which took about 4 or 5 times. And he sat there and he said, you need to ask me to be your sponsor. I said, come on, you're my sponsor. He said, no, you have never asked me, will you sponsor me? I need you to say, will you sponsor me? And I'm kind of, come on, you're my sponsor, come on. I'm going to read you the inventory, get on with it. He said, no, you need to ask me. You need to humble yourself and ask me. And everything inside of me just caved. Where I come from, you don't ask for help. You don't say, will you please help me? And the gig was up. I said, will you sponsor me? He said, sure. I read on my inventory, and I got on with the rest of the steps there. He's a great guy because he ended up, I'll tell you this, character defects are removed when God says so. We're just willing and ready. This guy ended up dropping a guy in a park who's peeing against a tree. He had like 5 or 6 years sober. He sees this alcoholic peeing against a tree in a park. He drops him, kicks him in the privates, floors him. He's got 5 or 6 years sober. He knows he can't live that way. So he comes back in the park the other day doing his little run, and he sees the guy there, and he says, I got to go make amends to the guy. Goes and makes amends to this guy. This guy's in the program. He's got like 7 or 8 years sober. Let me go figure that. It's amazing that this guy is still my sponsor. He just gives me that kind of direction. He essentially kicks me in the privates, humbles me, just lays it out there. On August 19th, we went to a baseball game up here at the new ballpark. And I'm having a really fit of life here. I moved up to Murphy's about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago. And I was just having a hell of a time, and it's been getting progressively worse. August 19th, I was telling him, this frickin' thing and that, and I'm just flipping out. He says, you know what you need to do? And he reaches in his glove compartment, he gets his little 12 and 12 out, and he says, you need to read this 6-step with me. Just start reading it out loud. And I said, I ain't going to read that stuff. I'm 10 years sober. What are you talking about? He says, well, you have what you have, and I have what I have. And I'm just humbled. I'm just like, my God, I got to do the same thing over again. Well, this is just the story of my life lately. I finally hit bottom about 2 or 3 weeks ago, made amends to my wife, cleaned up about 2 years of just living like an idiot without even really trying to. And my sponsor, every single time I talked to him, was surrender, surrender, surrender. And that's just about his message to me every single time I talked to him. Surrender, surrender, surrender. The surrender comes piecemeal. I've been doing this a little while. The things I have to surrender today are a lot different than the things I surrendered when I first met him. In fact, when I met him, I had 3 days sober, and I remember sitting on that bench. I'd been to meetings in the month of June, and I knew kind of a little bit about time. Somebody stands up at 30, 60 days, 90 days. Ooh, they got time. Ooh, that guy's got a year. Woo! I heard other people even have birthdays of like 10, 15 years. So I got this perception of time that the whole idea is to get time. You want to get time. Now, that's got to be such an obsession with some people that they lie about it. So it's a little bit different than just getting time. It's not just about counting my days. It's making my days count. But even in the early times, Kevin's introducing me to everybody who walks by. Hey, Roy, this is Andy. He's got 3 days. Hey, Kev, can you just, maybe just give him my name? And then, hey, Gloria, this is Andy. Hey, he's got 3 days. Kev, just shut up, don't tell him those kind of things. Because it's not cool to have 3 days. Well, I've come to find out in the program that it's very cool to have 3 days. In fact, this guy called me this morning. I'll show you how God works a little bit. This guy, I've given him my phone number 4 different times. It's a kind of a small town, so I'm kind of wondering how whacked out he is that he didn't know he'd asked me 3 times before. But on last Wednesday in Sonora, I was at a meeting. He asked me for my phone number, so I gave him my phone number. Telling him, I've given you my phone number a couple times before, and you've never called, and I just kind of gave him my number. I said, come on back to another meeting. Well, this morning, I'd taken off the day from work. Approved time off, 2-week notice kind of thing, everything's cool. And at 7:40, which is about the time I'd be on the road between Murphy's and Sonora going to work, ring goes the phone, wife picks up the phone, she doesn't know who the hell this is. Guy says he's going to talk to Andrew, she passes me the phone. I say, hey there, and this guy has 3 days. 3 days. 3 days is very cool. This guy saved my life this morning. Because just about when I'm trying to do my whole planning about what I'm going to say tonight, there's this new guy right in my little lap saying, I just got out of jail 2 days ago, and I really don't know what the hell to do. I think I'm going to go to a meeting today. What a great idea, Jeremiah. Get yourself to a meeting. This is the way the thing works, that 3 days can be very, very cool for me. I hope it's very cool for you. But the whole thing about time, I was hearing people kind of talk about, I got 10, 15, 20 years, and they kind of say it like with their thumbs in their lapel and ain't I something. And I kind of sit back and go, if we had a moral problem, if this was a moral disease and I was just being bad and you'd been good longer than I had been, sure, you can stand up there and say you got more time and you're better than me. But we don't have a moral problem. This is not a moral disease. What it is it's a progressive fatal disease of alcoholism, and for us to drink is to die. I admire the people who have time. I'm very glad that I have time. I wouldn't give any of it away. I don't want anybody who has 1 or 2 days to try to go back and start all over. I hope you keep the time that you have. But the thing for me is to stand on my time is like resting on my laurels. And I think it's marvelous if a guy has 3 days, and he ought not to be judged for it. I think it's marvelous if a guy's got 63 days. I think the guy ought to keep coming back. I think it's marvelous if a guy's got 25 years, because when I sit in a meeting, I need to see that it's still important for me to go to meetings. And that's what these people with time do for me. I had a couple awakenings. I actually lived with this guy named James for a while, and I was a little bit of a struggle. I'd got it together a little bit in sobriety, but I turned 3 years sober, and I'd met the woman that was just about to be my wife. I didn't know that. She didn't know that, but she's my lovely wife today. And I was, I guess I just want to talk about awakenings. Awakenings have come for me kind of slowly, and one of the first ones that I had was this one. God, I don't know why I'm even called to talk about it. It just popped out of me. I mean, the guy left the room, and I'm, whatever. Here goes. I'm not in charge. I like to drink coffee with cream and sugar in it. And this guy I moved in with, he just makes a pot of coffee and it's black. I just moved into this guy, and I had really nothing. I had a box of Cheerios and a coffee mug. And I moved in and wake up in the morning, and it's a Saturday morning, and there's that black pot of coffee there, and I had my cup. And I poured the cup, and I didn't even have a bowl, but I had some Cheerios. I poured them in a cup. And I sat down on the floor, didn't have a chair, sat down on the floor. There I am with a cup of coffee and a cup of Cheerios. And this line from Scripture comes rolling over me, and it says, my cup overflows. I had nothing, and I had it all. I had it all. I had everything. I had everything I could possibly ever wanted. It's that little moment of awakening that strengthened me to come back and seek that kind of an awakening some more, because what I like to do is try to judge my life by its circumstances. One of the first Thursday night meetings I went to, there's a group of guys, they get together, and they They arrive at about 7:15 for an 8 o'clock meeting. Big group, 250, 350 people, something like that. They all gather, and you don't sit down until 8 o'clock. And I was pretty new, maybe 30, 60, 90 days. And I show up at the meeting, and it's 7:15, and there's maybe 20 guys, and they're all hugging each other, and they're talking and joking, talking about the ball games and stuff. And I sit down, and I kind of stood out. There's 250 chairs, they're all empty except one, and I'm sitting in it. This guy comes up to me, his name's Mel, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Don't judge your insides by everybody else's outsides." And this guy's still my friend today, because what I like to do, what I've been conditioned to do, is look good. I went in front of Judge Chang, and I was conditioned to look good. That's the idea, is look good. And this guy's telling me, don't judge your insides on everybody else's outsides. And I began to see that this is some kind of an inside program here, inside job. Began to do the work, and then that's what kind of led to some of the awakenings like the one I had with James there. I drive between Murphy's and Sonora. It's about a 45-minute drive. And Billy D asked me to do this, I guess, back in August, September, something like that. In between Murphy's and Sonora, I've so many times I've thought about everything I'd say, and everything on the drive home, everything I'd say. And just about 10 seconds ago, my mind went more silent than the deepest meditation. It just went blank, absolutely blank. God, I wish I could do that again. For me, meditation used to be a six-pack of beer and some Pink Floyd. And meditation is a little bit different now. Well, so what is it like today? What is it? I moved up to the hills 2 years ago, and I just made mention that I had made amends to my wife. What had happened was I had sneakily begun 2 years ago, without any malice or any bad intent, I'd begun to kind of control things and kind of order things and kind of get things in kind of my way. Then we had a little baby come along, 16 months old now, and I'll tell you, the one who wears the diapers makes the rules. It began to all fall apart. That's why I was talking to you about August 19th. I mean, things were beginning to fall apart then. They fell apart really well. What had happened was my wife and I decided to write a book on marriage. A lot of people think, talk about relationship stuff, that's kind of an outside issue. Well, I think there's probably 4 relationships you ought to get into, and don't wait a year to get into them. Number 1, get in a relationship with a sponsor. 2, get in a relationship with some other people in this program. 3, get into a relationship with this power greater than us, that one is God. And then 4th, get in a relationship with yourself. So I started getting into the... hit me. I started getting into this relationship with... I'm totally out of it there. I got into this relationship with my wife, and we decided to write a book on marriage. The 12th step talks about several paragraphs on marriage. The 4th step says there's the inability of the alcoholic to form a true partnership with another person. So relationship seems to be pretty key. Well, I start writing this some notions on marriage, and I go downtown, little downtown Murphy's, and I'm sitting there writing. And I can't really get all these flowery statements to come out. So I just start writing what's really going on. And what really melts me is I just start writing that what I have in my wife is this perfect adversary. She's not content with me being an idiot. She wants me to be my best. And I'm beginning to wake up that I haven't been my best. So it begins to break down a little bit, and then August comes around, I'm talking to my sponsor, it begins to break down a little bit further. Then a couple Saturdays ago, I was at a meeting with these women. Both of them have together 43 years of sobriety. And I was kind of lamenting that, I used to have this relationship with my wife, and then we end up with a mortgage, and then we end up with a kid, and then we end up with living in the hills, and I don't have my friends around, and I'm not in a band, and, whatever happened to these old connections that we used to have. And this woman says, my final kid just left the nest. And I look across the table at my husband, and I say, what's going to be our connection? So I began to see that, all the things that we have in our life, they're very well the connection. They aren't the connection. They're part of the connection. And just today, one of the reasons I'm a little bit scattered right now is that just today, we met with our counselor, our favorite counselor, at 10 months married. He's the guy that we called. At 3 years married, he's the guy that we called. And I just met him again today. And he brought us back down to this ground zero thing, that what a relationship is going to really be based on. is the whole notion of dropping your old control. I had just begun this new behavior about 2 weeks ago and started into it, and it's working out pretty well, I think. So back to AA, those of you that are open-minded or listening, the rest of you are going to be waiting for the dance next door. At 56 days of sobriety, there was an earthquake, and I thought I caused it. I was lying back. My sponsor and I had read the third step a little bit before that, and I was trying to get a handle on this power greater than myself. And I really couldn't get it. I couldn't get it at all, because the God that I had when I was raised was that gotcha God. I had a black book, and we weren't even. He was keeping tabs on me, and I had nowhere near tipped the scales in my favor. And I read the third step with my sponsor. We took the third step prayer. Nothing magical happened. I went home. A couple of days later, go by. 1 a.m, this earth shakes, and I go to the door, and I'm standing in the door jamb so I don't get hit and everything. And then I lay down back on the ground. What had been going on was I was having this dream, and what was going on was this little kid that had been sitting on the rock in Thompson Canyon had been leading me around by the hand. And he was pointing out peace and serenity and love and joy and peace and calm and all these things. And after the earth stopped shaking and I got out of the door jamb, I laid back down and I realized that was the power greater than myself. All the power greater than myself that I had when I was a little kid wasn't the one that I had now. That power I could trust came in the form of a child. We got to be childlike, not childish. I have this baby now, and a couple Thursday nights ago, I was kind of, about 4 months ago, I was flipping out, because the way you put her to sleep is you bounce her to sleep. So I'm bouncing her to sleep. I'm rocking her back and forth, and she's just fussing and kicking and fussing and kicking, and she's not buying into that it's time to go to sleep at all, even though it is. And we got this big window in the front of the house, and it's dark, and it's late at night, and I catch my reflection in that window again. And I realize there I am holding this baby, and this is exactly the way this power greater than me holds me. Exactly. I kick and scream, and I fuss. I don't like what's going on. I wish it would be different, and I still get held. Which is the exact same message that my sponsor gave me at 3 Days Sober. I love you. He didn't say, do this, and this, and this, and this, and then I'll love you. He said, I love you. Now we're going to go do this. And it's that one alcoholic talking to another with a lot of love between them that tends to heal. Ask yourself how you've changed, how you've been made different. Has it been by a beating? Has it been by somebody yelling at you? Has it been by somebody getting in your face saying you're such a blah, blah, blah loser, this and that? We do enough of that in our own head. That's why I come to AA, so I can hear a different message, tune into something else. What I hear is, you are a loser when you drink. You're a loser when you have those loser thoughts of drinking, but you don't need to live that way. You're not that way. You don't have to do that. Oh, okay. That's exactly what Jeremiah was talking to me about this morning. He was under the impression that if he had these thoughts and feelings going on, that he had to go throw a heater through the room, he had to go back to jail, and then he had to drink. And I said, what did you do differently? And he said, I called you. Right on, man. This is it. When I caught my reflection in the window and understood a little better that this is exactly the way that my God holds me, things began to change. These cracks begin to open and a little bit wider, and the light can start shining through. I wish I had one of these really flowery stories, or even not even flowery. I mean, I guess for AA it would be pretty flowery, where you get, 100-mile-an-hour chase scene, stabbed 3 times, you're running around, all this other stuff. I don't have one of those stories, and what I'm hoping to convey to a lot of people here this evening is that alcoholism is a fatal disease, and it's not going to be much of our friends, and that there is a way out of there. When I was thinking about a way out today, just about the way to live my life, I can tap into what my brain's usually telling me, because it's always really loud. It tries to tell me a lot of things about what I need to do, where I need to be, what I should be looking like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It gives me a pretty good rundown. And that's not really the one I need to listen to. A reading from our wedding, about 7 years ago when we got married, we had a reading that was, I'll say the word Bible. It was actually from the Bible. And it was on this guy, this prophet, sitting in a cave. And he's waiting for he's waiting for God to pass by. And he sits there, and there's this big earthquake. And he said God was not in the earthquake. And he's sitting there a little bit longer, and there's this huge big fire comes roaring by, and he says God was not in the fire. Then there's this huge wind that blows by, makes a big howling sound. And he says God was not in the wind. And then he heard a whisper. And he raced to the mouth of the cave because he knew God was passing by. So my head is yelling and screaming and really, really loud. And what I'm trying to learn how to do is tap into that still small voice. That's the one I want to follow. That's the one that connects me with other people in this program. That's the one that connects me to my wife. That's the way my life works the best. Billy D is really great if you ever get a chance to see him doing his whole what his head's telling you thing. You know, he gets his hands going like little mousy things like this. And what I get is an image of this one guy walking down the street, pretty calm, eating a tangerine, enjoying the sunshine, maybe a little cold out, whatever. He's just kind of walking along. And then right off on his right shoulder is this guy just yelling and screaming and giving a whole big hoedown on what his life's like and what he needs to do and how he shouldn't have said that and what he should have said and how he ought to be and where the hell he ought to be and why did he do this and giving him just on and on. And I picture a guy sitting up on the hill watching that scene go by wondering who in that scene has the problem. It's the one yelling and screaming and getting really animated and trying to make this other guy hear him. The other guy's just kind of walking along enjoying the day. So I began to tap in. I'm not into kicking any of these voices out. I'm into kind of just sitting still and then letting them all reveal themselves for what they are. The ones that want to help are going to be around here. The ones that don't want to help are not going to be around here. That applies to a lot of things, I suppose. But in my head, the still small voice, it just comes in once. Call your sponsor, and then it doesn't start ranting and raving. Go to a meeting. It doesn't go on and on about how all the meetings I have to go to, what I have to do at those meetings, what I have to look like. It just says go to a meeting. It says read the book, kind of just still small voice. Just do that. Meanwhile, I've got all the other things in my brain that I could do. Like Sunday night comes, and I go to this meeting in Copperopolis. And it's just kind of my car knows the way. I know when the hour strikes when I'm supposed to go. And it's just kind of, let's go to the meeting. It's really kind of calm. And then my head will start in, oh, man, it's raining. And, boy, the fire's on. And, well, the night is young. The wife is here. Yeah, this could be really a nice little evening. And it kind of goes on and on and on when the still small voice was just the truth. Just go to the meeting. I can kind of hear that still small voice right about now. It's telling me that I ought to wrap this thing up. Thanks for your patience. Well, hell, I'll just talk a little bit about inventory a little bit. There's a tremendous amount of information in inventory in the fourth step. There's a lot of questions you can ask yourself. There's a lot of questions that you can write out the answers to them, write out your responses. It says it might be helpful. And it also says in there what we want to do is we want to find out what these defects have been and are. It doesn't say have been. It says have been and are. Meaning, welcome to AA. You're still kind of screwed up, and that's all right. We've got some things to clean up. That's what makes this thing work for me is that I don't see the newcomer come in and say, hey, get the hell out of here. Why don't you sit in your chair and behave? I say, let me see what I can do to help you. Let's try to find out what these defects of character have been and are. And it's going to take a while to get there. The first thing is, please don't drink. It kind of makes it difficult to see. Second thing, we're going to start taking these steps here in order. That means you have to show up where the message is. That means meetings for me. You got to go to meetings because that's where they're talking about the program of recovery. That's been my experience. Then I tell them, you got to read this book. Why? Because that's what they told me to do. That's the only thing I really know that works. If you've got a better way that works, that's fine. The long story is what I've been saying. The very short story is, and I hear this in meetings all the time, my life used to be pretty screwed up. I came to AA, and it got a lot better. That's one of the stories you hear. The other version you hear of that is, my life is kind of screwed up. I came to AA, I went out back drinking, and it still doesn't work, and I'm here to start all over. You don't have to do that. You can come here and stay. There's a little bit of a, I don't think the night would be complete for me without a little bit of a Zen story. And on the notion of inventory, there's a guy who's going to sleep every night, sleeps, wakes up, and he notices the book that he was reading right before he went to sleep is not there anymore. And he's thinking, God, was I really reading that book at night? Or did it drop off the edge? Or what? It isn't there. So he goes to sleep the next night, and he wakes up, and the light is gone. And he knows that he didn't do anything with the light. He knows he didn't put it out in the garage. So he gets a little curious. Well, the next morning, he's not sure if things are missing, things are getting broken, what's happening. So he begins to investigate. So he goes to sleep the next night, and he wakes up, and sure enough, the couch in his front room is gone. I mean, you can see the little dimples where the legs were standing. And it hits him, I'm being robbed. I'm being robbed. Every single night I'm being robbed. So the next night, he says, I'm not going to go to sleep. I'm going to stay awake and watch. For me, alcohol is the rapacious creditor. Rapacious meaning greedy. It's a greedy creditor. It's going to take everything. And I've got to stay awake and watch. Got to stay awake and watch. Doesn't mean I have to analyze. I don't get paralysis by analysis. It means I watch and I look very carefully and I run by what I see by other people. If I get a great, brilliant idea, I typically run it by somebody. I remember I was a field sales guy out here in the Santa Clara Valley. Called on the shop, the key is in the door, everybody else is in the back, and the lobby about this size is full of about 50, maybe 60 guitars, all of them custom made, about $3,000 or $4,000 a piece. And I say, my ship has come in. This is great. What I'm going to do, my sponsor has a truck. I'm going to take this key, go copy it next door. We're going to come back tonight. This is brilliant. I leave work, I hustle up, I find Kevin. Kevin, you'll never believe what I found today. I have a key. It will unlock the door to a lobby that has 30, 40, 50 guitars in it worth about $3-4 grand a piece. He's going, yeah? And then he just interrupts me and says, what are you thinking? And I thought I had a great, brilliant idea. This is great. I mean, what's the matter? Run the idea by somebody. Find out what I see. What I saw there was my greed, my insecurity. What I ended up seeing by running it by somebody was that I think I'm not enough and that I got to have all these other things to make me enough. And he's there to tell me, no, buddy, you don't. I'll end with this one. I made amends for a guitar that I stole. Actually, it was a different guitar. What happened was, back in high school, I had a guitar amp, and I took it to the store to get it repaired. And I was standing in line, it got repaired, and I put it on my shoulder, and I'm waiting in line. It's $50, and the line is just not going anywhere. And I go, forget this, I'm out of here. I just take my amp, I walk out the door. Off I go. My buddy Mark is driving with me, and he says, hey, you can go back tomorrow and say, where's my amp? What a brilliant idea. That is just a gold. Oh, yeah, right on. So I get home. The next day I call. I didn't want to call that day. I said, yeah, I was going to come by and pick up my amp. Is it there? And they said, well, yeah, come on and pick it up. So I show up, and, of course, my amp isn't there. It's at my house. There is no amp there to be had. So I said, well, what are we going to do here? He says, well, call me tomorrow. And I call him the next day. And I say, where's my amp? It's still at my house, but I'm not telling him that. I don't work an honest program. And he says, well, we don't have it. He says, call me back the next day. I think we can find it. I call back the next day, and I say, where's my amp? They don't have it. It's still at my house. And the guy says, well, why don't you come on in here? And what he tries to do is he wants to sell me a new amp because I lost my own one. Only he's going to give me a discount because, of course, they lost my other amp. They don't know I have it, and there's no need for a discount here because I have a perfectly functioning amp at home. I tell them, well, I'm not really an electric guitar anymore. I'm kind of into acoustics, Let's see if we can't set something up like that. So he goes ahead and shows me acoustic guitars. Now, I'm thinking my amp was worth $250. They're going to give me a guitar for $250, and I'm looking at the sales price $250 guitars. I'm not looking at the list price $250 guitars. So he says, well, of course, we're going to show you some acoustic guitars, and you can pick one, but of course you got to go by the list price. And I'm thinking, well, whatever. Now, this is how humiliating it is to tell you this story. If you've ever bought a car, if you've ever bought a fridge, if you've ever bought a guitar, if you've ever bought anything like this, other than groceries, and even at grocery stores, you don't pay list price. You just don't. If you listen to the radio anytime, you get 50% off. You get a rebate of $3,000. I mean, something happens where the price comes way below the list price. I ended up getting a guitar for list price. Took this guitar home. Years go by. Write an inventory, share it with my sponsor. Okay, I got to make amends for this guitar, right? Well, both the amp and the guitar. Because I took the guitar home. Well, I end up going back to the guitar store here, and it was I guess I had 8 or 9 months, and I went in there and I said, a couple years ago, I took an amp, and then I didn't really tell you that I took it. I just kind of said it was gone, and then you guys gave me a guitar for it, and I'm in AA. And I don't want to drink anymore, and I'm taking the 12 steps in order with a sponsor, and I'm reading a book, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm praying to God, and I'm working with newcomers, and I'm here to set it right. This guy's looking at me really cross-eyed, and he says, hey, well, that's great, so, how much do you owe us? I said, well, it's like a $250 guitar and like $50 for the amp. He says, great. He's waiting for me to pay him. And I said, well, I'm kind of supposed to talk to the owner of the store. And he says, I've been the general manager here for 15, 20 years. You can talk to me. You can run it right by me. Well, yeah, that'd be cool, but, I'm supposed to talk to the owner. He said, well, the owner's kind of gone here. You can talk to me. And he's just kind of waiting for me. Pull out your frickin' checkbook, buddy. You're coming all this way to make this thing right. Make it right. So, if you're going to do any amends, show up with a little bit of money in your pocket. I don't. I call him back saying, let me get back in touch with you in a while, and I'm hedging now because now I owe $250 plus $50 for this amp. So a couple weeks go by, a couple months go by. My sponsor says, ever clear that up about that guitar amp thing? Anything going on with about that? And I said, well, yeah, kind of. You're kind of pregnant. You kind of what? You kind of cleaned it up. No, well, actually, I didn't. I went by there and talked to the general manager. He says, well, you got to go back there and talk to either the owner or the general manager. I'll help you. He takes me over there. Drops me off. It's about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. The store's going to close at like 8:15. I walk back in there, and the guy says, hey, how you doing? Well, I'm doing okay. Several years ago, I stole, I took an amp that belonged, I took this guitar. He says, yeah, I know all that. And wait, let me finish. I'm in AA. I'm taking the 12 steps in order with a sponsor. And he says, I've heard all this stuff before. I said, yeah, and I'm here to set it right. And I write out a check for $250 for the guitar, and I got $50 cash for the amp. And I write it out, and I know the humiliation that's coming over me. I can feel it again right now. I was paying list price for a guitar. I was paying list price for a guitar, and I gave this guy $50 for the amp upstairs. Well, there's nobody else in the store but me and the general manager and all the employees on the counter that aren't working. The night's over. So they all start kind of crowding around. And they want to hear hey man, this guy stole something. He's coming back to pay for it. List price for a guitar, man. That's unheard of, man. Whoa, I got to check this out. Who's the idiot? And they all start crowding around. And I begin to tell them, because they want to know why. I say, well, look, I stole this thing a long time ago, and, I'm in AA, and I'm taking the 12 steps in order with a sponsor, and I don't want to drink anymore, and I read the book, and I go to meetings, and I'm praying to God, and, the guy said I got to pay him back, and I'm here to make it right. And these guys are, oh, man, that's unheard of, man. Wow. Whoa, wow. And they all go out, drink, and party that night. Well, the owner was gone. He had started a group called YWAM. He was part of a group, Youth with a Mission, big Christian group helping out kids all over the world. And he gets word of this because the general manager knows this. I can imagine the general manager calling the owner, hey, you'll never guess what happened today. Well, the owner calls me. I was living over here on Keeble Avenue with Rich L. And calls me about 11:30 at night. And he says, I just want to tell you what you did tonight, how many people it helped. And this is how much I need this program today as I needed it then. My head's telling me, just say the magic words, dude. Here's your $250 back. My head's just going, come on, baby. Come on. And what he's telling me is, a lot of those guys there are really struggling with their relationship with God. They can't seem to make a decision to follow a particular God. And what you did standing there moved all of their hearts, and they can't really believe that a guy would have some principles in his life and begin to change like that, all because of the direction that you're taking. And I'm just, yeah, that's great. My head's still yammering, $250, but it's just, I can't believe that, finally my life that turned short story, crappy life, come to a good life. I can't believe this is actually happening. I can't believe it. It's actually happening. Today, same thing. I took out 2 mailboxes on a road, driving like an idiot. I go back to the places where the 2 mailboxes used to be, put a note there. I owe you for the repair of your mailboxes. Call me. Here's my number. I drive off, making up some excuse about how a bee flew in the window. There's no bees in October in Sonora. And the woman sure enough calls me, and she says, this is unheard of, This is really unheard of. I can't believe it. And I'm thinking, great, my motive is clean, my intention is good. She's going to say, hey, you don't owe me any money. So she says, I'll tell you what, we got a handyman here, I'll just send you the bill. Would that work for you? Sure. So every morning I drove driving back work, there's these 2 gleaming, glistening, brand new mailboxes there. As a nice little reminder, every single day I go to work, I got to do the right thing. I got to humble myself. I got to take direction. I got to listen to you people like you've been listening to me. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.